Hey guys, welcome to my biography presentation. Today I'm going to be talking about American geologist and explorer John Wesley Powell. Starting with his early life, John Wesley Powell was born March 24th, 1834 in Mount Morris, New York. He was the fourth child born from his parents, immigrants Joseph Powell and Mary Dean Powell. Joseph was a farmer, tailor, and Methodist preacher, while his mother was a missionary. 4 years later, in 1838, his family moved out from New York to the southern part of Ohio. While growing up, John met naturalist and scholar George Crookham. Crookham helped pique John's interest with things such as science, literature, and history. John and his family moved twice more after Ohio, once to Wisconsin in the year 1846, another to Illinois in 1851, where John would later become a schoolteacher the year after. Throughout the 1850s, John would attend the Illinois Institute, Illinois College, and Oberlin College while working as a schoolteacher. Even after attending these three colleges and studying topics like Greek, Latin, and botany, John never actually earned a college degree when attending these three institutions. Starting in 1855, Powell would start the first of his exploring trips, crossing from Illinois to the Mississippi River. During these trips, John would collect things such as fossils while also studying the geological and natural history of the regions. Around this time, he also meets 18-year-old Emma Dean, who becomes his wife later in life. Okay, so in 1861, on April 12th at 4:30 a.m., the American Civil War officially begins after Fort Sumter in South Carolina is attacked by Confederate soldiers. John enlists into the Union Army only a month after the attack on May 8th. Another month after he enlists, he is promoted to second lieutenant to fill in a vacancy spot left by another person. Later in the year, he requests a leave of absence from General Ulysses S. Grant himself, so he's able to marry Emma Dean. After marrying his new wife, he returns back to the war. A year after the war first started, Powell was shot in the wrist by a mini ball in April at the Battle of Shiloh, Tennessee. 2 days later, field doctors decide the best course of action is for the arm to be amputated, so Powell loses the shattered part of his limb. 3 years later, after being promoted to major in 1863, John Wesley Powell resigns from the Union Army due to his disability. And then on the left here is a picture of John Wesley Powell in uniform after losing his arm in Shiloh. So after his time in the war, Powell goes back to Illinois and becomes a geology professor at Illinois Wesleyan University in Bloomington, and then becomes curator at the Illinois Natural History Society Museum a year after. During his professorship at Wesleyan, he would take his students out into the field to do work. This type of work would include collecting things such as fossils, plants, minerals, and then also observing the surrounding wildlife. Soon after becoming curator, and with the possible encouragement from a general he worked with during the war, William Sherman, Powell would soon set out with his wife and students to collect specimens on one of his first scientific explorations to Colorado in 1867. The trip was funded by academic or scientific sources that included the Chicago Academy of Science, the Museum of Natural History, and the Illinois Industrial University. During this expedition, Powell and his group of 11 other hikers would hike and explore the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains and climb Pikes Peak for several weeks. So, in the year after, he planned another expedition that explored the Colorado River. After many others who had tried and could not complete the journey, he was still determined to complete it. He gained funds from various sources, permission from the government themselves, and had boats made solely for the journey ahead. He started from Wyoming in the Wind River Mountains, where the Green River is located, to the Gulf of California and Mexico. Powell took with him a party of 9 other men in 4 rowboats, leaving on May 24th, 1869, and starting their trek. Things were quickly going bad as the group lost one-fourth of their rations. The boats became damaged constantly, and even one of the men from their group had abandoned them so soon after starting the journey. Eventually, three more men left and had been killed 2 days before the actual expedition ended. Nearing the end of August, the group had faced many hardships and lowering much of their morale. After traveling hundreds of miles on the river and spending many months in the wild, the six remaining men reached the point where the Virgin River in Arizona met the Colorado River, which is now present-day Lake Mead. Reaching this point, they had finally marked the end of their first expedition. After enduring the hard months, Powell's topographic, geologic, and wildlife notes were not completed and thus unreliable. Even though his notes were incomplete, he was still regarded as a national hero for his expedition. Not too long after, Powell recounted his time spent on the Colorado River in his book, New Tracks for North America, and decided to make plans for a second expedition. So, so 2 years later, in 1871, John Wesley Powell would begin to set off on his second expedition on the Colorado and Green Rivers. After completing his first trek on the Colorado, John planned better ahead for the trip. So he would study potential supply routes that could be used, and he grew friendly relations with the Native Americans on the land. He was also able to obtain a lot of funding for his trip much more easily this time around due to his completion of the first expedition. So after a year of preparation, him, his brother-in-law, photographers E.O. Beeman, James Fenmore, and J.K. Hillers, a professor by the name of Almond H. Thompson, and five others left on May 22nd. On the left is a picture of Powell and Chief Tagu, leader of the Powhatan tribe, overlooking the Virgin River. This picture was most likely taken by one of the members of his party and shows the friendly relations he had with Native Americans. So, continuing on with the last slide, Powell would have his boat in the front and he himself would be sitting on top of a chair. This allowed him to be able to signal to other ships and see ahead when traveling the river. For the first 4 to 5 months, Professor Thompson was actually vital for conducting the exploration of the rivers, all the way from Green River Station to the Paria River. So during the next 2 months after that, Powell explored the lands of the canyons and studied the tribes surrounding the area. He would be traveling between Salt Lake City and the river. During the winter months, Thompson mapped the area while Powell was back east. After the winter months were over, Powell and his party discovered an unknown river. After discovering this river, it was named the Escalante. The voyage was stopped at Kanab Canyon after the group ran into dangerous heavy rain and snowmelt, making riding the boats too risky. This voyage helped bring much more information, and Powell was able to produce the first maps of the Colorado River, while Professor Thompson made topographical maps for the region of the Grand Canyon itself. Dozens of photographs were taken by the photographers, and then other party members kept journals and diaries of their time on the expedition. The second trip proved successful for Powell. So for the next few slides, these are just going to be pictures from the expedition Powell went on in 1871 to 1872. So for this first picture, this was taken at Green River in Lador Canyon, and it just shows one of Powell's crews sitting on the river. So, so for the second one, it's just a picture of two of the boats used by Powell's crew during the expedition in Marble Canyon, and if you look in the back, you can see the chair built into the boat that John Powell sat in when commanding the other ships. So in the So in this third one, it's another more close look at the boat that Powell used during his travels. So two would sit in the back and row there, and then another two would be in the front rowing, while Powell would sit in the middle. The boat he sat in was also named after his wife, Emma Dean Powell. So So after completing both of the expeditions on the Colorado River, Powell had decided to retire from teaching and move to Washington, D.C. John Wesley Powell made many important discoveries and contributions. One of them, he explained in detail how rivers erode and create gorges when a rocky region is in the process of gradually elevating. Powell also helped get Congress to create and modify land laws to help prevent the erosion of land in the West by farmers, lumbermen, and water monopolists. In 1879, Powell helped set up the U.S. Geological Survey and became director of the U.S. Bureau of Ethnology at the Smithsonian Institution, staying director for about 23 years. And then the portrait on the left is of Powell taken in 1874, so a few years after the second expedition and a couple years before he became director of the Bureau of Ethnology. And then to continue on from the last slide, while being director, he also sponsored work by famous anthropologist Franz Boas, along with other scholars. 2 years after becoming director for the Bureau, he also becomes director for the U.S. Geological Survey. In 1888, he and 32 others founded the National Geographic Society. In 1893, he sent the President of the United States his resignation letter for the U.S. Geological Survey. 8 years later, on September 3rd, 1902, he passes away at the age of 68 next to his wife and daughter. In his life of 68 years, John Wesley Powell was able to do many things with it and help not only contribute to geology, but to science in general. So after passing, Powell did get a few things named after him. This first slide is of the mineral powellite, which was named after him. The second picture here is of Lake Powell in between Arizona and Utah. And for this last picture here is just going to be a picture of Powell's Peak. So to overview, John Wesley Powell was an American professor, Union soldier, explorer, author, and geologist who was famous for his expeditions in 1869 and in 1871, exploring the Colorado and Green Rivers and the Grand Canyon. He served as director of the U.S. Geological Survey and director of the U.S. Bureau of Ethnology at the Smithsonian Institution. And also, while serving as director, he helped advocate for land laws protecting the environment. So this last slide here is just my works cited page showing all the citations I used for my presentation. So that's all I have for you guys today, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Thank you.